Ireland loves one-off houses. Of the almost 2 million properties here, 750,000 are detached homes. Detached houses are so popular, there's literally a book that became a bestseller in Ireland, and it's just blueprints of how to build a one-off house. The affordable and simple designs were built all over the country. But the bungalow bliss didn't last. Around 20 years ago, planning rules tightened up and it became much harder to get planning permission. In Kildare town, it's market day, and here, like many rural areas, it's not hard to find people frustrated by the planning process.
It was the most stressful time of my life, honestly. It was just horrific. We were turned down a couple of times. It was just cost a fortune because it was money all the time.
And a lot of the farmers and their sons and daughters couldn't get planning. And when they went to Kildare County Council, they were told, go into the local town and buy yourself a house.
If you have the land, well then your kids should be allowed to build on it. You should be allowed to build on it.
How strictly planning rules are enforced has varied depending on where you live. In County Wicklow, David Quinn is a third-generation auctioneer covering the southeast.
All finished, all done at 260.
He's bringing me to a place that he says shows the difference between neighbouring counties.
Well, I suppose we're in North Wexford here, Louise, and you'll see a lot of lovely new once-off houses on both sides of the road.
So these are all one-off houses?
These are all one-off houses, all built on their own sites.
And Wexford was historically a bit easier to get permission for them?
Not a bit, a lot easier. You won't have to ask where the border is. You'll just know by the density of housing and development.
As Wexford becomes Wicklow, the one-off houses along this road become far less frequent. So we're just going over the bridge.
We're going over the bridge now, so we're entering County Wicklow now, and you can see there that the...
well, I can't see anything. I can't see any houses.
Well, you're seeing lovely green fields and lots of farming, and we will come across some housing, but the majority of it will be houses that are kind of there for generations.
It's possible that it's just a coincidence that far more people on the Wexford side of this road happen to want to build, or the landowners wanted to sell, but David isn't convinced.
Had the planning rules been the same both sides of the border, I've no doubt that there would have been a similar density of houses built here.
The planning changes announced today are intended to remove geographic inconsistencies. They also make local needs tests less strict. What's required will be tiered by location. If you want to build a house in a rural area deemed a high-pressure location, you'll have to have lived at some point for 10 years within 3 kilometres of where you want to build. In rural places within the commuting catchment of towns and cities, which will be the majority, it's 7 years within 10 kilometres of a site. In very rural areas, there will be no specific local need requirement unless it's a place of scenic beauty or heritage. Gaeltachts will have different versions of these rules depending on whether you speak Irish or not. As well as changing who can build, the government is removing restrictions on where, in particular behind existing rural homes and ribbon development. That's development that looks like this, rows of houses along a rural road, allowed for years, but since 2006, adding another home in a location like this was likely to fall foul of planners, a scenario familiar to Kildare planning consultant Derek White.
There's over 20 houses in a line on this road, and this is the last site on this road. And I've been trying to get planning permission on this site for nearly 20 years. But because there's more than 5 houses over a 250-metre stretch, ribbon development keeps on stopping this application.
The previous limits on ribbon development have consistently been referenced by planners, along with other reasons, for refusing some planning here. Going forward, nationally, automatic bans on ribbon development won't be part of planning rules.
But if you were brought up in a countryside, whether it be a farm or a one-off house, you should be allowed to move back there and raise your own family in the same situation.
What about transport, though? People will say, if you're living in the middle of nowhere, if you need a bus, it's much more expensive to be putting on rural public transport?
Everyone nearly has a car. Most people have cars, some people have 2 cars. There's a lot of local links around as well. Buses that come into rural areas and they deliver a service. But I don't think the traffic issue is one of the reasons why we shouldn't be allowing people to build their homes in rural areas.
But there isn't consensus that planning changes are needed or that they'll have the desired outcome. Brendan O'Sullivan is an experienced chartered planner. He's now teaching the next generation of planners in UCC.
When I was a planning officer reporting on applications, I recommended permission more than 4 times than I recommended refusals. So there's a more permissive environment than we are led to believe.
What you'll hear a lot is that the children of farmers cannot get planning permission. Is that true?
I worked as a planning officer for 14 years in rural counties. I have never seen the son or daughter of a farmer being refused planning permission on their land, except in very, very, very rare cases where the only site that was available to them had a technical issue such as archaeology that needed to be protected, a dangerous road.
Brendan says farming families should be prioritised, but he questions how sustainable it is to allow those not directly working the land to build isolated one-off homes. There are, he argues, alternative ways to live rurally. This is one such initiative.
We're in the middle of the village of Kells in County Kilkenny. It's the deep Kilkenny countryside. It doesn't feel like that.
These houses don't feel isolated because they aren't. They're in the middle of the village. A developer sold individual sites for owners to build their own houses. It's not like a suburban housing estate. Homes are much bigger and they're all different designs. But they're not miles away from services.
The place we are in now is literally 100 yards from the primary school. So it's creating a new form of community in a rural village. It's about people expressing their individuality, which is genuine, but also it's in the village, and we haven't
proximity to services.
We haven't lost that connection, physical connection to the village.
But developments like this are far outnumbered by standalone one-off homes, with potentially a lot more now on the way.
If the restrictions were eased and it was made more user-friendly, I suppose, you could see up to 20-25% more sites coming to the market. Without a doubt, I would say 20-25% would be a reasonable estimate to expect.
Are we going to end up with McMansions all over this beautiful sunny southeast and elsewhere?
We have a lot of those as it is now, but I think the cost of building is probably one of the things that will maybe stop that.
Today's announcements extend a planning system that some say is inherently unequal. Only certain people are allowed to build a one-off home in certain areas. Environmental campaigners warning too that thousands of additional detached homes is not sustainable planning.
Whenever there is a natural disaster which causes problems for electricity or access, with rural dispersed housing, it's much harder to address those issues, to get them hooked back up and to bring those houses back online. Another issue is we know septic tanks are failing. The latest report said 59% of inspected septic tanks failed last year. A lot of these new houses will also rely on septic tanks, so I have serious concerns about the additional pollution load that would come from those.
Bungalow bliss or bungalow blight? The government says the changes strike a balance and get rid of an air code lottery. Critics warn it's inviting a free-for-all.
That was Louise Byrne, our policy and analysis correspondent. Let me begin with you, Minister, there. You know, as Louise said, the concern is, you know, bungalow blitz or bungalow blight. And as I heard you saying today, you said that the new housing policy, that each planning request will be judged on its own merits and that there will be no overarching prescriptive rules. But that could be a free-for-all. Is that a real concern?
No, I think the changes that we've announced today as government are about ensuring that we have a fair, clear and consistent approach to rural planning policy, regardless of where you're from in the country. I'm from Waterford, Malcolm is from Kilkenny. So regardless of where you are in the country, we need to ensure that we have a consistent approach to rural planning policy. I believe that our policies to date have been too restrictive. This is a fundamental change in the way we are looking, but I think it's fair and reasonable for people to have an expectation to be able to live in the rural area that they're from, to be close to their families and with the support of their communities.
Fair and reasonable. What would you say, Malcolm?
Well, one thing. Firstly, we would welcome, the Green Party would welcome the clarity around the Gaeltacht areas, because that's something Conradh na Gaeilge and Irish language campaign groups have been looking for a long, long time. But more broadly, I think there are significant challenges as evidenced in the VT, and particularly the issue that Dr. Elaine McGough raised around there are 500,000 septic tanks in individual wastewater treatment plants in these houses. Over half of them, and you have to remember there's a very low inspection regime in the first place, but over half of those have failed. So if we're going to add to that, there are significant challenges around water quality, and from a public health perspective, if you look at the 170,000 households that have their own private wells. So in tandem with this, if the government is going to embark on this policy, which it is, I think it's critically important that we have free well water testing, that the grant schemes are less onerous to apply for the remediation of septic tanks. But there are also broader issues around public transport, the local link services,
pressure on services.
All of that I think is important.
What would you say to the concerns that Malcolm Noonan and many others do raise?
Sure, and they're reasonable items to raise, but I do accept that we have an issue in relation to legacy septic tanks and we need to support people in terms of remediation. But I'm sure Malcolm would accept that we have strict standards now in terms of the development of rural housing, in terms of developing septic tanks that are to the EPA code and standard. So while there may be historic issues, what we are developing now and what planning departments right across the country are ensuring in terms of the strict criteria and conditions that they're imposing on rural one-off houses is to ensure that we don't have the difficulties of the past.
Okay, you want to come back in?
Yeah, I mean, the broader issue in relation to that is that there isn't any legal obligation in terms of registration of private wells. There's an issue around the septic tanks that the inspection regime is simply not adequate.
Okay, and we've just...
But that, Miriam, I think...
is a big issue.
It is a big issue.
We'll just park the water in the septic tank. I mean, one thing that is interesting, Malcolm Noonan, I was in South Kerry yesterday doing a film about something else, but actually they were all talking there about the depopulation of that part of Ireland, rural areas that are remote, and housing was an issue. So do you accept there is a problem?
Yeah, so what we have is a very lopsided country where both John and I live. There's high levels of development, there's high ribbon development and development of one-off rural housing that's coming from the urban pressure. On the west and in some parts of the west, northwest Kerry, but other parts of the west as well, and even in the Midlands, there is depopulation. So that requires a much broader and deeper look at developing our towns and villages. We have a town centres first policy. Is this policy going to run contrary to that? And we have to look at the opportunities in rural Ireland for people in the West. And I think in particular around farming, because farming incomes in those parts of the country are dropping and they're not getting an equal share of
the one-off housing. Answer.
So if we accept that there's an issue in terms of depopulation in certain areas, housing plays a really important part in that. So housing supports the local school, it supports the local GAA club, it supports the local town and village in the vicinity. It's not an either or. We can do both.
People are just building summer homes there. I mean, how do you stop that?
And thanks very much for flagging that. That's really important. As part of this national planning statement, there is a 10-year owner-occupier clause as part of any planning permissions that will be received for one-off housing. That's right and appropriate. This is not for short-term lets. It's not for holiday homes.
This is a one-size-fits-all policy. That's a blanket approach right across the country, where there probably isn't the same perceived need in the eastern part of the country as there is in the west. And I do think that government needs to look at rural-proofing such policies before embarking on them. I think critically important too is that what about ambulance services? What about waste collection services, broadband? All of these other issues and then local authorities, where local authority members year on year come back to John's department looking for extra funding for local road infrastructure. And they might see that they're getting an increase, but the increase in oil prices and materials is way beyond what's
Pressure
required.
on local authority.
I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding of how rural Ireland operates. You know, we do have cars in rural Ireland. We also have rural transport, and we've invested heavily in terms of
But it will
rural
unquestionably put
transport
pressure
over the
on
last
local
number of
services
years.
and financial pressures on local authorities, more houses.
I think it is reasonable and appropriate that if somebody is from a rural area, that they have an expectation that they can live close to their families, their communities. I don't think that's a wild suggestion. And if people have moved to an urban setting because they haven't had any other opportunity to date, and they want to move back to the rural area that they are from,
Fair enough, but
that
you
they
have
will
a
be
limit.
facilitated
Do you have
under this.
a number in your head, Minister, of how many houses might be built per annum?
No, we haven't, because
But is
there
that
are
dangerous? Is that
there
not?
are a number of things that feed in to the numbers. We know that not everything that receives planning permission is built. There are viability challenges. That's why we have the likes of Help to Buy and First Home scheme to be able to support people to build in rural areas and to buy in urban areas.
I think if we look at the housing output in one-off houses between 2024 and 25, there is a significant outturn in terms of housing being developed. And it's not to say that there's restrictions there, and we saw it in the VT, people from rural areas and farm families have never been refused. So I think the other issue that if I did hear some comment that this is going to increase that housing from 5,000 per annum to 10,000 per annum, that is going to put huge pressure on services. And I think that that's the consideration that has to be given. We look at the environmental impact, we look at the impact on water quality, but also the provision of services and people living longer and living in rural areas in isolation. So it's all of these issues that need to be given consideration that I don't think can take a blanket approach, but it needs to be much more plan-led right across the country.
For too long in this country, we've had the air code lottery that has been just shown in the VT just now. So if you were from one area and from another area and you apply for the same thing, one could be approved and one might be refused. I don't believe that that's fair, and that's what I'm trying to introduce as a minister in this government, to introduce fairness, but also to remove those prescriptive practices around the likes of appropriate infill, backland,
There might
ribbon
be a lot
development.
of farmers and rural people looking in tonight saying it took a long time, it took 20 years for governments, including your party, to realise that their policy wasn't correct.
Well, look, what I would say to that is we have had a fundamental change in terms of planning over the last 2 years. We've had the new Planning and Development Act, we've had the revised National Planning Framework, and now my focus, this is a programme for government commitment. It's ahead of schedule, Minister. And that's because we have placed an emphasis on this because it's so important.
The final point I'd make is that we did have a town centres first policy. This is running contrary to that, and that's our concern.
It's not an either or.
Thank you both very much for coming in tonight. We appreciate it.